Okay, so this video is on the social area in psychology. So we're mainly going to look at the different things that the area investigates and its assumptions, or rather like its core principles and its core beliefs. What I want you to do is work through this in your workbooks, please. So, the social approach to the social area of psychology, so very generally what this is it looks at understanding human behaviour in a social context. So it looks at factors that lead us to behave in a particular way due to the presence of others, due to the environment, and due to the people that we have relationships with, basically. So the approach suggests several assumptions about behaviour, and you need to be familiar with all these assumptions. So one of these assumptions is that other people and the environment influence behaviour and thought processes. So it's saying other people in the environment. Now these may be people who you have a relationship with, but it's not limiting it to just people you have a relationship with. It's essentially saying that anybody who is in your environment, who you're sharing that environment with, so it can be passers-by on the street, it can be people you work with, it can be any person who is in the same environment as you, can influence your behaviour and the way that you think. So the situational debate that we've already looked at in psychology is very closely linked with the social area because they follow similar principles. Another assumption is that all behaviour occurs in a social context, even in the absence of others. So that means that even when you are completely alone, the way that you think and the way that you behave has been influenced by social factors, so by previous environments, by people and what they would think. So, for example, it suggests that your behaviour is influenced by the actual, imagined or implied presence of others. So there is an example there where if you perform a socially unacceptable behaviour when you're on your own, for example, if you were sat at home picking your nose, then you might feel guilty or a bit gross about it, because it is not an acceptable way to behave, so it's not like socially acceptable. So because you've kind of internalized that social value at some point, it's still going to affect your behavior or the way you think or the way that you feel at this time. Another assumption is that our relationships with others influence our behavior and our thought processes. So behavior can be influenced if you're in a group of friends, that you may end up doing something with them that you wouldn't have necessarily done on your own. So like football hooliganism, so like getting a bit rowdy and things at a football match is an example of this. So similar but slightly different to that first assumption that we gave, because this is explicitly talking about the relationships that you have with people. So Tajfel was a psychologist who came up with the self-identity theory, so that's Tajfel in the picture, and that suggested that your social groups are very important to you. So your social groups give you kind of a sense of meaning, so you fit into the social world, and that can influence how you choose to behave. So he essentially said that you've got different identities. So you've got kind of a personal identity and a social identity, and that you can increase your kind of identity and your self-image and things like that by performing certain behaviours. So the idea behind this is that you've got in-groups, so they're groups that you are part of, and out-groups, which are groups that are separate groups from you. And you might increase your like self-image and your identity, your kind of social identity in your in-group by discriminating against the out-group. So there's an example there saying Burnley's the best football team if you follow Burnley. So that might make you feel good. So that's enhancing your status of your in-group. Or you could talk about other teams and say Blackburn's a rubbish team, and then that would increase, again, your identity because you're discriminating against others. So just a few social concepts that are looked at. So have a go at that first task in your booklet. So I am going to show you something at some point which is related to self-identity, but first of all just have a go at this. So what is your personal identity? So who are you? Is that similar or is that different to your social identity? So who you might be in a group or with your friends or at college. And again, is that the same or is that different to your online identity? Okay, and that's really just there to get you to think about, you know, how these are similar and how these are different and why they might be. So for example, they might be different. Your personal identity might be very different from your online identity because of those social factors. So just fill that in for me. So you may want to pause the video here and do that.